Be forewarned. If you are easily upset or don't have the stomach for controversy, do not listen to this program.
Ads must not contain content that exploits controversial political or social issues. That rules out everything I've ever done.
I can hear him say, bad company, and I won't deny. Bad company, till the day I die.
This is The Decline and Fall of America, starring Jim Greenfield, formerly known as The Jim Greenfield Show, starring Jim Greenfield, and my producer, Stuart Rice, formerly known as Stuart Wheat. He seems to be attracted to various types of grain. Quote of the day: in the lexicon of the political class, the word sacrifice means that the citizens are supposed to mail even more of their income to Washington, so that the political class will not have to sacrifice the pleasure of spending it. George Will.
Who is George Will?
George Will is, I'm glad you asked, because I wanted an opportunity to repeat this because it's so good. George Will is the guy, so if you didn't catch this the first time, George Will is the guy who said, in the lexicon of the political class, the word sacrifice means that the citizens are supposed to mail even more of their income to Washington, so that the political class will not have to sacrifice the pleasure of spending it. George Will. This is Jim Greenfield, bringing hope to the desperate, meaningless lives of millions of listeners here on The Decline and Fall of America. First topic for this episode comes to you from the Department of Censorship and Liberal Fascism. And I know you've heard the controversy raging on the airwaves and elsewhere about whether censorship is occurring on the internet by large companies targeted, let's say, against conservatives. And I have some personal experience with this issue, which I'd like to share with you, that Facebook has censored me, Jim Greenfield, if you can believe that. And I actually wrote a letter to the editor of the Wall Street Journal about this, and I want to read it. It's brief, so I'll just read it to you quickly. To the editor, I know how internet censorship works because Facebook censors me. I host a conservative-leaning podcast called The Decline and Fall of America, parentheses, starring Jim Greenfield. It combines analysis of politics and public policy with satire. The algorithms that screen content on Facebook's computers can't tell the difference between satire and hate speech. By the way, you know what an algorithm is, right? An algorithm is a technique that the former Vice President of the United States, under President Clinton, uses in order to help him maintain rhythm when he's trying to dance. That's an algorithm. That's why he gets credit for helping to invent the internet. Okay, so I'm going to recapitulate. No, not recapitulate. Just do it over again. The algorithms that screen content on, this is part of my letter to the editor of the Wall Street Journal. The algorithms that screen content on Facebook's computers can't tell the difference between satire and hate speech. They've started rejecting ads for our podcast with Kafkaesque canned explanations such as, quote unquote, nudity. Okay? So we tried, Stuart did this actually. We tried to post an ad on Facebook, and it was rejected on the grounds that it contained nudity. Our ads, continuing with the letter, our ads have no nudity. Facebook just rejected an ad for an episode about racism. The ad featured a photo of a KKK, that's Ku Klux Klan, rally, with a caption that said, quote, they aren't racist, they just like to wear dresses, close quote. Facebook's computer didn't get the joke. Do you all get the joke? We put up an ad of the Ku Klux Klan rally, and we said they aren't racist. They just like to wear dresses. Okay, so we're not promoting the Ku Klux Klan. We're making fun of them because they're idiots. Okay, they aren't racist. They just like to wear dresses. Get it? Okay, so Facebook rejected this ad on the grounds of nudity. And Stewart's theory was that there was too much white in the ad, and that the computer algorithm thought that meant nudity, which I think is racist in itself because it's assuming that it's naked white people, right? It's racist. It's a racist algorithm.
Kind of really pasty white.
Yeah, if they were
people,
wearing, if they were
and saggy,
albinos.
pasty, saggy albino.
They were albinos and
coneheads.
And and let me just say, yeah, coneheads. That was a great movie. So anyway, let me just say that this is kind of a tangent, but I don't think there are any real white people in the world. I mean, I've never seen a white person. I've heard they exist, albinos. They're white. The rest of us who are called white, this is a misnomer. We're kind of pink with like a tinge of beige. And so I think it's a misnomer. And by the way, black people, to me, don't really look black. They look kind of a dark brown. They're different shades, and I think it's just kind of a way of accentuating our differences and trying to divide us by calling them black and us white. If we were called beiges and they were called browns, that would mean we'd be much closer together, much less of a stark difference. I think this would help to reconcile and heal the racial divisions in our country. But that's a tangent. And by the way, yellow people, they're not yellow. Never seen a yellow Asian. They're really kind of a tannish also.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, Facebook rejected our ad for an episode about racism, which featured a photo of a Ku Klux Klan rally with a caption that said they aren't racist, they just like to wear dresses. Facebook's computer didn't get the joke. We appealed the rejection, but apparently the teenage Facebook employee who reviewed it didn't get the joke either. Now, even if you're a paying customer, as we are, there's no way to speak to a human at Facebook to solve problems. Has anybody out there listening ever tried calling Facebook? You can't call Facebook.
Here, Facebook.
That's some of Stuart's idea of humor.
It is.
I meant on the phone, Stuart. You can't call them. Now, they have a phone number. Facebook does have a phone number, and if you call it after going through their automated phone answering system, you'll realize that all they're doing is referring you back to their website. You cannot reach a human being at Facebook. Now, we spend hundreds of dollars a month on advertising. You'd think that would give us at least a little bit of clout that we could maybe talk to somebody. I mean, if you're spending a couple $1,000s a year at some business, wouldn't you normally think that maybe somebody could take 5 minutes to talk to you? You know? No. And I kind of wonder what the breaking point is. If you're spending $1 million on Facebook ads, do you have like an account rep that you can talk to when you want to? And how do you get to them? You know? Stuart, we need to find that out. So anyway, we couldn't reach anybody there to discuss the problem. The computer that answers the phone just refers you back to the website. So much for the free exchange of ideas without gatekeepers on the internet. I think I like the 20th century better. Jim Greenfield. So that was my letter to the editor of Facebook.
And they published that in the New York Times?
Well, I sent it to the Wall Street Journal, not the New York Times.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, I don't deal with the New York Times.
All right.
Yeah.
So they definitely did not publish that.
I'm not discussing whether they published or not. I'm saying I sent a letter to the editor. Why would you bring that up? I mean, you're supposed to be trying to make me look good. Trying to make me look like some schmuck that writes letters to the editor that don't get published. You know how many thousands of people write letters to the editor?
You're right.
So anyway, yeah, but not all of them are as well written and clever. Now, the thing is, the internet is supposed to be like this wonderful thing that helps to support the free exchange of ideas without gatekeepers, you know? And I'll tell you something. I mean, I really appreciated this. As some of you may know, Jim Greenfield, had been fired from 7 radio stations. Before I started hosting this podcast, I had a long and undistinguished career as a talk radio host, and I got fired 7 times. I'd been on 2 networks, syndicated radio networks, and 5 local talk stations. And I kept getting fired because I was doing a show that was, frankly, it was too good. They don't want good. They want mediocrity. You can't be too bad. If you're really bad, they won't hire you or they'll fire you. And if you're really good, they'll fire you because it's too provocative. It's too controversial. You're stirring up too much stuff, right? They want it to be kind of vanilla, and in the middle. And it took getting fired 7 times before I figured this out, which is that the trick to not getting fired, Stuart, is try not to piss off the owners of the station, at least not during the first few months you're on. Because, they listen to you for the first few months to see if you're any good.
Right.
After that, they don't listen. You can do whatever you want. But anyway, I figured this out too late. I'd already been fired. But anyway, so when I got an opportunity to do a podcast, I thought, well, this is great. I work for myself. No gatekeepers. I had the experience of going to radio stations and, giving them a demo tape. And I realized that the idiots who are trying to decide whether I'm good enough talent that I should be on the radio, those are people who themselves don't have enough talent to be on the air. That's why they're working in administration for those stations. If they were an on-air talent, they wouldn't be the guy deciding who to hire, right? So I said, okay, I get it. I'm dealing with gatekeepers there. It's just like, you want to publish a book. You got to go through the gatekeepers at the publishing company and persuade them that your book is good enough to be worth publishing. And I didn't even bother doing that. I mean, how many years did it take J.D. Salinger? How many rejections did he get before they finally published The Catcher in the Rye? Well, every creative genius who's ever existed has gone through this crap. I mean, how many movie studios rejected the Wizard of Oz before somebody finally decided to make the movie? So that's the way it is, okay? So this is great. I can do my own podcast. No gatekeepers. I work for myself. And I figured this significantly diminished the risk that I was going to get fired if I worked for myself.
Right.
So I'm very happy. I can do whatever I want on my podcast. There's only one problem. You got to market. As I've told Stuart, no, maybe it wasn't Stuart. I've told my other business partner. It's not true that build a better mousetrap. Build a better mousetrap and the world will be the path to your door. False. Not true. You can have the greatest mousetrap in the world, but if you don't market it, you're not selling any mousetraps. It's all about marketing. So I'm doing this brilliant podcast, now called The Decline and Fall of America, formerly known as the Jim Greenfield Show. But we got to market it. How do you market it? Facebook. Gatekeeper. They're friggin' gatekeepers. They're censoring our ads, our promotions. How are we supposed to promote the show if some computer algorithm or some idiot who doesn't know anything can't tell the difference between hate speech and satire? And of course they can't. How are they going to tell the difference? So I, Jim Greenfield, decided, well, I'm going to try to understand their policies so that we can navigate these waters, especially since I can't talk to anybody. Who was it? Barbara Streisand I saw. Something about Barbara Streisand. She had some problem with Facebook, and she was able to get it resolved. You know how she did it?
She's Barbara Streisand.
She called Mark Zuckerberg on the phone.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, no problem. We'll fix it. I wish I knew Mark Zuckerberg. So this comes to you from the Department of Obfuscation and jointly from the Department of Obfuscation and the They Think We're Too Dumb to Notice department. I looked up Facebook's advertising policies so I could attempt to comply with them. If you actually take them at face value, it's impossible to comply with them, and you'll find out why. Listen, these are Facebook's ad policies. This isn't all of them, but this is the ones that are relevant. Number 3, discriminatory practices. Ads must not discriminate or encourage discrimination against people based on personal attributes such as race, ethnicity, color, national origin, religion, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, family status, disability, medical or genetic condition. Okay, so let's see how that would apply. I'm going to go through. There's several of these. Okay, let's see how that would apply to the Decline and Fall of America show. Stuart, remember we put an ad on Facebook promoting a podcast we did, which was a satirical show about John McCain's brain.
Yes.
Now, this of course was in very poor taste,
Very poor taste.
but at least it was done before he died, so it wasn't as poor taste then as it would
It
be
could have
now.
been worse. Yes.
Yeah. So it was about. It came from the Dredge report. It was about a McCain's brain surgeon giving a report that a large chunk of McCain's cerebrum was to be removed surgically to stop the cancer, but the surgeon said that this would not interfere with Senator McCain's functions as a United States Senator. Now, it wasn't even really making fun of McCain. It was actually making fun of all of them. That you don't really need to have a full brain to be a senator. Get it? Okay. It was making fun of politicians. It was funny. That would be disqualified under this provision. It was discriminating based on medical condition. Well, what about attributes such as age? If you make some comment about in our ad, some like if I say I don't know, Nancy Pelosi's too old to be a House Speaker, or Donald Trump's too old to be president, or Joe Biden, who's even older than Donald Trump's to be. We did one making fun of Trump and Biden, who were threatening each other to get into a fist fight. That these old guys, so that would have been disqualified under this, right?
Yeah.
Too old, right?
I'll let you keep going, but it's crazy that it wasn't disqualified.
Yeah, why did they disqualify it? Religion. Well, I make fun of Islamic extremism all the time. Not as much as I used to, because they haven't blown up any buildings recently, but I can't do that. They're going to censor that. Gender identity, sexual orientation. Well, I do podcasts where I deal head on with the issues of modern decadence, homosexuality, and transgenderism. I get into all that stuff. I make fun of it. I guess I can't do that anymore. Not on Facebook. Can't do it. Can't promote it. Okay, the next one I've got is adult content. Ads must not contain adult content. Well, what the hell does adult content mean? They already got one on nudity. Oh yeah, no, it is nudity. Ads must not contain adult content. This includes nudity, depictions of people in explicit or suggestive positions, or activities that are overly suggestive or sexually provocative. Well, we did one show about sex, a joint show with Stewart's podcast, the comedy sketch comedy hour, sketch podcast comedy hour, podcast sketch comedy hour, comedy sketch podcast hour. What is it called? What's your show called?
Sketch comedy podcast show?
Yeah, don't listen to it. So anyway, we did a crossover show where we jointly ran this about sex, right? We spent the whole show talking about sex. And we had a picture to promote it where there's a guy and a girl, and she's kind of like suggested. It's not it's not explicit, but it's kind of provocative. And it works so well that almost everybody who goes to our website happens to click on that picture. Not because the content's that brilliant, but it's the picture. It's a pretty good picture. I'm sure Facebook wouldn't allow that picture, right? Sure they wouldn't. Okay. So next is sensational content. Facebook ads must not contain shocking, sensational, disrespectful, or excessively violent content. Well, I don't know how you can have violent content on a podcast. Verbal violence. Stuart and I have had some verbal violence. It's not unusual for him to get so mad that he threatens to quit. And on more than one occasion, he's called me an asshole. He's shaking his head and he's kind of saying, yeah, but you are an asshole.
Yeah, most of the time it's saying you sound like an asshole.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not
Stuart
explicitly calling
Stuart would never make an ad hominem attack. He tells me I sound like a racist. I sound like an asshole. I sound like a pervert. I sound like a pedophile.
Yeah, I don't attack the person.
No, he didn't do that. I don't know what the difference is. Well, anyway, so what about shocking, sensational, disrespectful? My whole show is disrespectful. That's all I do, is make fun of and disrespect the idiots who are running this country with good cause. I'm not allowed to do that. So, not allowed to make fun of we're not allowed to discuss personal attributes. Policy ads must not contain content that asserts or implies personal attributes. This includes direct or indirect assertions or implications about a person's race, ethnic origin, religion, beliefs, age, sexual orientation or practices, gender identity, disability, medical condition, including physical or mental health. Didn't we have an episode about mental illness in government? Jim would rather be, what was it? What was the title? Jim would rather deal with mentally ill people in the private sector than mentally ill people in government. There was a picture of Nancy Pelosi in a straitjacket. That wouldn't have been allowed, right? Under the new policy, that wouldn't be allowed. Medical condition, financial status, membership in a trade union, criminal record, or name. So if I want to make fun of a politician, say, well, he's got a criminal record, can't do it. Misleading or false content, I'll skip over that one. Controversial content. Now this one's pretty much a catch-all. Ads must not contain content that exploits controversial political or social issues for commercial purposes. That rules out everything I've ever done. Totally rules it out. Now, obviously, Facebook has allowed most of our ads to run. So they must be enforcing this policy selectively. Otherwise, they would be banning all political content. They would have to ban all political content. Well, and they're not. So that, I don't understand their business model because, like, if I'm running a business, I don't want to be saying to people, I don't want your money, go away. But that's basically what they're doing. They're saying, we don't want your money. We're not going to allow you to run your content. And they're obviously enforcing it selectively because this stuff is so overbroad, general, and vague that it pretty much excludes anything that's the least bit interesting. Any interesting creative stuff, artistic, political, it's all, all of that is controversial. It's all, what was the other word? Disrespectful, sensational, and shocking. I mean, what do they want it all? Vanilla, pablum, totally boring? Who's going to listen to that? Who's going to listen to that crap? So what they have is these rules, and it gives them a fig leaf to cover their censorship. Because basically what they're going to do is they're going to censor content they don't agree with. And then they use this as the justification for it.
That's why it's important for everybody to go and actually listen to the podcast. Share the podcast. When you see a post up and you like what the content is, share it so other people can see it. That's the best way to do it.
I think you should share it, and you should also sunny it.
You should also what?
Sunny it.
Yes.
Sunny and share. But I'm glad you said that because I was thinking that we should kind of promote ourselves a little more during the show. Just a little. I don't want to be annoying about it. But listen, seriously, if you like this podcast or you hate it, if you love it, maybe you could send the link to some friends, maybe, or people who you might think might be interested in it. And if you hate it, just send it to people you don't like. Let them be subject to it also. One other thing, ads must not contain profanity or bad grammar and punctuation. Well, that would rule out most of what most people do on the internet.
The bad grammar.
All of it. We get a lot of comments on our Facebook page. About, I'd say 60 to 70% of it is profanity, bad grammar, and bad punctuation.
They're just not paying for it, so they get to put it up.
Yeah, they get to put it up.
We're just the vessel for that. That's all.
You're a vessel.
All right.
So thinking deeply about the nature of reality so that you don't have to. This is Jim Greenfield. I should say, this is Jim Greenfield. Thinking deeply about the nature of reality so that you don't have to. Here on the Decline and Fall of America. Time for you to play the music, Stuart.
You're welcome for listening to another brilliant installment of The Decline and Fall of America starring Jim Greenfield, formerly known as The Jim Greenfield Show. If you have a topic you would like Jim to talk about, or if you think Jim is brilliant and want to cheer him on, or you think Jim is an idiot that doesn't know what he's talking about, send an email to jimgreenfieldshowpodcast@gmail.com, follow the show on Facebook at Decline and Fall of America, or on Twitter at JGS Podcast, or you can call and leave a message for Jim at 503-512-0811, and your message will likely get played on the show. And now, our beautiful outro music, The Ode to Jim.
14 years on the radio, Jim Greenfield served humanity. His bosses fired him 7 times. They said he's no Sean Hannity. Greenfield tried to stay out of trouble and be discreet as best he could. He claims the reason he got canned behind the mic, he's just too good. Jim's enemies tried to silence him in panic and hysterica, 'cause Jim Greenfield blames them for the decline and fall